Thank you for joining us on the Financial Pastor Podcast, where we discuss everyday truth from God's Word and how it applies to our daily living. And hope this will help you, encourage you, draw you closer to the Lord. God bless. All right. We are here with a dear friend of mine and a hero and someone that I highly look up to and honor, and Mr. Matthew Bradford. Matthew, it's good to have you, buddy.
Yeah, it's good to hear your voice again and chat with you for a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. And Matthew has a story. I'm going to kind of allow him to get into more detail than me. But in 2007, 2007, I believe it was, your life changed pretty dramatically.
Yep,
Can,
2007.
can you tell us what happened on that day?
So we were deployed to kind of northwest Iraq in the Al Anbar province in a town called Haditha. And it was, my company. We were 2nd Battalion, 3rd Marines, Echo Company. But, the first 3 or 4 months of that deployment, it was just, you're pretty, bad combat, I guess, is the right word to use. It was firefight after firefight, IED explosions. We had a lot of guys get wounded, guys get killed. But it's just like that fast pace of the deployment just kept us going. And, after those first 4 months, it started slowing down because it showed the work that we were doing as a company. We were eliminating the bad guys, and the people that lived in the town were, starting to interact more with us. They felt safe and secure, and they were leaving their homes and doing their daily living. So like when January 18th rolled around, we were at the point of the deployment whereas, next few months we're heading home, we're starting to wrap it down, give it over to the next unit that's going to be relieving us. And just on a basic IED patrol, I was on point man for the whole deployment, found a few IEDs throughout the deployment, and just that one I found, one step too late. Pretty much by the time I saw it, I was on top of it. And, just a few seconds earlier, I was warning the Marines behind me to be alert because there's a suspicious item up here to the right. And as I turned back around and I looked down and I saw the command wires in the ditch that went inside of a pipe underneath the road that was directly underneath me. And it was, by that time, it was just too late to move, to do anything because there was an insurgent sitting in a building close by, probably waiting for a Marine or waiting for somebody to step on that area and just push the button. And when he did, it sent shrapnel into both my eyes. And, that January 18th, 2007 was the last time I saw, but I saw what took my eyesight and, ultimately took my legs. But, I woke up 3 weeks later from a coma in Bethesda, Maryland to kind of understand what happened. And because it was, it just happened so fast. Like I didn't have time to sit there and think about it. And then all of a sudden, before I knew it, like I was pretty much passed out, knocked out. I didn't know if I was alive, if I was dead, what was going on, and to wake up 3 weeks later, now with my family around me, in the United States, while everybody else was still in Iraq, and just trying to understand what happened. And that was kind of it's interesting, like looking back from the time I woke up from the coma until probably early April. Like I kept having this image in my head, like on my, it was like, it was this like frozen picture of the white bag, command wires. And I never understood at that time why it was until I had a couple of Marines that I served with that was with me that day came and visited me in a hospital. And one of those Marines actually was patrolled right behind me on that deployment. And he told me, it's like the last time, he's like, all you said, you turned around and you yelled, watch out, there's a white bag up here. And next thing you know, the explosion happened. And it kind of put two and two together on what that image in my face was.
And as you're talking through that, as some of our listeners and people in our church are going through a lot of dark days, difficult times, a lot of struggles. In that moment, you can imagine. So, number one, you had given up your life for our country. You had been willing to give up your life so we can live by serving our country, which we truly appreciate. But not only that, so you had given up so much, and then this happens. And all of a sudden, you were doing a good deed. You were serving our country, and now all of a sudden, in a moment's notice, you've lost your legs and you've lost your eyesight. So I would say you were probably immediately, as I would be, in a dark place. Would that be correct to say?
You know, very much because right before that, maybe a month and a half, I was a point man. I was really comfortable with my job. I learned a lot from my team leader to my left that patrolled next to me, and then he had to go away from maybe for like as a 5 to 7 days, and they put me in charge of this, being the point man, the team leader. And I remember one of the patrols we were on, my squad leader looked at me because I was like, "All right, where do you want us to go?" And he says, "Matt, like we follow you, we trust you. You've been doing this long enough." And it just being put in that situation, that next man up mentality, kind of gave me even more confidence to like, wow, like the Marine Corps, like growing up back and forth between Kentucky and Virginia, divorced parents. Like when I lived in Kentucky, I was in almost a different elementary school every year, different house almost every year, and didn't get that true stability until I moved to live with my dad in Virginia, and that was only 3 years. But now I'm like, okay, like I found something that I enjoy doing. I do it pretty well. I like doing it. Like I was ready to get back to Hawaii where we were stationed and get my own Marines in to where I could be their leader. I could take them off to war and I could bring them home, but I could also teach them and direct them and guide them. So, the same way that my team leader and my squad leader did that to me. And like I was had all the confidence in the world, and then all of a sudden, just that one wrong step, it's like the rug just got pulled out from underneath my feet, and waking up again, like when I deployed, like I wanted to either come home with my brothers or not come home at all. Like I didn't want to come home wounded. I didn't know what a wounded life would look like. Like my only choices was join the Marines, and that was it. And now here I am, basically having to start over life. And even then, like I tell people now, like the only two times I really went to church when I was, before I joined the Marines was when my grandmother made me go, and then on Sundays at recruit training because the drill instructors would leave us alone. And so I laid there. I wasn't a bad kid. Like I was your typical teenager. I enjoyed life, us high school life, and then so I never understood like why did this happen to me? Like like you said, all I wanted to do was just serve and serve this nation, and now here I am waking up a completely different person, and I didn't think there was much life for me. It's amazing to think the two paths I chose. It's like there was one that I could have went off the deep end. I could have let self pity, poor me. Sadly suicide. But I chose just to live life because at that moment I had a lot of people come in my hospital room, talk with me, and they helped me get out of those dark spots, and it helped me kind of see my life a little differently, that no matter what was taken from me, it doesn't mean that my life wasn't taken, and I could still live life just a little differently, but I could still knock it out and do it.
You made a great point there where you said you were in a dark place. Things didn't go the way that you envisioned them going, and you were in a dark spot and you had to make a choice. And I think that's where everybody gets to a point when they're going through a difficulty is they have to make a choice which direction to go. And I remember you telling me or on a podcast we listened to through Alcova or Zoom that there was a lot of people coming in to encourage you, and at that moment you really didn't like it or you didn't really want to talk to them, but that meant a lot that
Mm.
different individuals would come um, to motivate you, and that helped later on. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's interesting because a few days ago was the Corpsman birthday, 127 years, and it made me think back to those early days in Bethesda when I was in that mindset where I didn't want to talk to anybody, I didn't want to eat any food, I didn't want to do anything, and sadly, like not eating and not like taking care of myself, it kept the feeding tube in longer, like it kept like I was on more medication. And but those Corbin, I think back, like they never gave up on me. That like I told them no, and then they would constantly keep coming in more and more over and over again. And it's just people kept surrounding themselves around me, and it's amazing how that light switch just flips on. And I actually got it from one of the Marines that I served with. They got injured a couple of months before I did. He lost a leg, and at this time, like I was more worried about like I didn't want to lose my legs. Like I wanted my legs to grow back. I didn't care much for the eyesight. Like I figured it would come sooner or later, but I didn't know if I would ever like leave a hospital bed, a wheelchair. Like I didn't know what my life would be like. And him losing a leg and him finding out that I was in Bethesda and he came in my room as much as he possibly could because he was going in and out of his own therapy. But he kind of helped me look at that road, that journey that I'm about to go down. Like, I will walk again. It takes a lot of, like, physical strength, but a lot of mental strength, and it's like, and I told myself from that moment forward that, like, I can do this. Like, this ain't nothing I can do, but it's just like gonna, like, progress. It could be a small 1% each day, but it's as long as you're moving forward in the right direction. And for me, I was very proactive in what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay in the Marines. I wanted to reenlist. And it was solely due to those people that came into my room and encouraged me that, okay, maybe my real purpose in life wasn't serving and deploying. Maybe it's this life, going into those hospital rooms, which at that time there were a lot of us that came home wounded. But there are a lot of people that were in those dark places just because they dealt with their injuries, thinking life is over. And it gave me the motivation that, okay, to get out of this bed, to get in a wheelchair, to get out of that hospital room, it's like I need to get stronger. I need to learn how to walk. Learning how to walk first for me would help out the whole, the blindness, the eyesight, and just through all that, just understand that all the wisdom, the knowledge, the ups and downs, like, take it all in, understand from it, like, it's because it's going to be a long path. It's gonna hurt some days. You're gonna want to cry and want to give up, but it's just know, as long as you're doing something to get yourself better, then you're on that right path.
And I think that's a great point that you mentioned pressing forward. And I
Yep.
think it's good for people to understand that whether it's salvation, whether it's a Christian life, whatever difficulty that you're in, to get out, you have to have that mentality that there is hope. There's going to be good days and bad days, but I'm climbing that mountain, and I
Yeah.
may take one step back. And our emotions, mentally, physically, spiritually, but our mindset is I'm going to climb that mountain, and it's a daily discipline to have that. And one of the stories I remember where you talked about how you were reluctant to take the covers off your legs, if I remember that correctly. And that was a big step for you where you decided to take them off, that you were unashamed in who you
Yeah.
were. Can you mention that a little bit?
Yeah. When I was, so this is probably like because, once I got my mindset in the right direction, and it's amazing because, so I got hurt on the 18th of January. I got to Bethesda on the 21st of January. And then I was in a coma for 3 weeks, but, and I dealt with those dark days. But the minute that I started getting focused on what I wanted to do, like, I started getting off medication. And by March 21st, I was en route to the next hospital. So it didn't take long. Like, once I just got my mind set on what I wanted to do. And when I got to Richmond, Virginia at the VA, like, I was still in some of those dark days, but I never let one bad day turn into two. So, but I was also at that time going to therapy. I was out of the hospital room. I was starting to interact more with people, and um, and it helped me. But also, like, every time I left the hospital room to go to therapy, go to wherever I was going, I always had like a poncho liner, a little blanket that I would put over my lap because I felt like that covered my amputations. Like, that blanket hid, my legs, and even though, like, people could still see that I didn't have legs, like, it gave me that comfort, that strength, that courage to leave that hospital room. And I just kind of realized the more I got out and interacted with people, I slowly started removing that blanket and realizing to myself that, why did I lose my legs? I lost my legs, for this country, for the Marine Corps. I love them both dearly. I love everybody that's, my family. I lost it for all of that. Like, what do I have to be depressed about? Like, or discouraged about? This was a decision I made as an 18-year-old. Like, I knew the risk. I knew what could happen, and I just put one foot forward. I realized that, like, my amputations are gonna grow back. Like, this is who I am. This is part of my story. Every scar on my body, the blindness, the amputation, it's all my story. Be proud of that story. And it's just looking back on a life, and everything that's happened to me. It's like, no regrets. You can't live that way. You got to learn from what happened, and make the best of that situation. These are the cards that's been dealt with to me. And you know what? Hey, like, this just gives me one more um, obstacle that I battle every day. But it's an obstacle that I'm willing to go out and attack and not let it define who I am as a person.
Wow. Yeah, that's tremendous. And I love the statement, just walk, right? To walk, you have to take the next step, and then you got to take the
Yeah.
next step. And for you, being in one of the darkest places that someone could be as a human being, you chose life and you chose to take the next step. And you didn't know where it was going to take you, but
Mm-mm.
look now how many people you have impacted, how it's changed your life emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and the impact that it's having. And so I think a challenge for people that are in a dark place is to take the right step and to take the next step and not quit. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, it's the just walk thing kind of came up on the Jocko podcast, but it's just learning how to walk. It kind of goes to another story from that as well. Just like every day going into therapy in my wheelchair and not realizing it, but going in there doing what I needed to do, rolling into the mat, putting my legs on, standing up, walking out, and just learning how to walk. And my physical therapist stopped me one day and says, Matt, you don't realize this, but every day when you come in here, you got a smile on your face, you're joking, you roll in here in your wheelchair, you do what you need to do, stand up and you walk out. You don't complain, you don't, you're here, you show up. And you see those young amputees over there doing their own core exercises, or these people who are still trying to figure out what they want to do, or how they can live life, and they see a blind double amputee doing this, and it just gives them hope and encouragement. It's that lead by example mentality that we're taught in the military, and it's just you don't have to go in there and yell and be a vocal leader. It's just showing up every day, doing what you need to do. Sometimes doing it quietly, but people watch. And I've learned that throughout life, that no matter where you go or what you do in life, like people are always watching. And it's that impact that you make, in life. And it's happened to me where people I don't even realize end up, are in those dark spots, and it's just the presence, the attitude, a smile, a joke, or just how you live life. It's like that impact probably could have saved their lives or made them look at life differently. And just walk was, learning how to walk, not wanting to trip over my own feet, not wanting to, slam my face on the ground or fall. And, my physical therapist taught me one day, it says, Matt, whatever you do, just put one foot in front of the next and just walk. Like, I'll never let you fall. And that trust and confidence just helped out so much. And, after I did that Jocko interview and that came out, and I got an email from I think he's a first responder, but he was overweight. He was battling cancer, and it just no motivation at all. Very negative. And he told me he's like, after I listened to your podcast, I bought one of your shirts and I told myself that I could do this. And he was like, I started walking from the bedroom to the bathroom, bedroom to the kitchen, to the front porch, to the mailbox, around the block. And he was like, all of a sudden, I'm starting to lose all this weight. And then I go into the doctor months later, and now I'm cancer free. And it's just truly amazing. When I don't know, I was probably 30 years old when I read that email. Like, these are emails that I never thought I would get, but it's just amazing, like the change from going from negative to positive to just saying, you know what, not me today. And it's and I think about the Matthew 6:34, and it's that Bible verse has stuck with me on the just walk. And it's like, because I realize life is not about tomorrow or next week, and we shouldn't focus on that. We should focus on right now in this present moment. And it's I'm sure we might get to this a little later, but where my life is now, and people keep asking me, like, what do I want to do with it? What do I want to do with this degree, or what I'm venturing down? And honestly, like, I don't really know what I want to do. It. I know when it comes to that time, God's going to put me in that right direction, and He's going to place me, where I need to be. Because in all of our lives, like, we're throwing down these detours over and over again. We never understand why we go down those detours, but at the end of the day, it all makes sense, and you see why God put you down that journey, that path that might be full of obstacles, might be a high mountain climb, but at the end of it is where you need to be.
Amen. Well, that's some good stuff. You've learned how to adapt and overcome continually, and that's a challenge of life. God has given all of us a purpose. We're in a cursed world, and
Yeah.
He's going to make all things new in the end. But God has given us the opportunity through Jesus to overcome in this life, to be ambassadors for Him. And the enemy wants to tell us we need to quit. You're not good enough. You can't. can't get out of the darkness that you're in. And
Hmm.
you're a great example to say you can overcome um, amazing obstacles. And when you do that, you didn't know where it was going to take you. You just said, I need to move forward. I need to adapt. I need to overcome. And I noticed just a couple things to share how big of an influence that you've had. I know you've been in the Oval Office of the president. You want to share a few things that the Lord has allowed you to become a speaker and to touch lives and some of the things that you have done and then what you're doing right now that you mentioned.
It's just I'm blessed beyond measure. And it's like looking back at people ask me like, would I go back and do it again? And in a heartbeat, I would do because at the end of this, I've learned so much about, like you said, life, like the ups and downs, the mistakes, the failures. Like there's a lot of things I wish I wouldn't have done, but it's like it's just stepping stones to where I am now. And at the end of this journey, like I met my wife and I got a family. I had a chance to say what I want to do, put my mind to it, put work towards it, and go out and do it. And it's like never once when I was going through rehab, going through all this stuff, did somebody sit there and say, Matt, like you can't do this. Can't is never in my vocabulary. It's like there's a way for everything. And, like I re-enlisted in April of 2010, had a chance to, serve 2 more years, 2.5 more years. And I had a chance to say, you know what, I'm done. Like the good thing about being a Marine is you're always a Marine. And then during that time, it's like that led me going to the educational route. Like I never once thought in high school that I'd be taking college classes, and then I started and I'm like falling in love with it. And, my dream school is the University of Kentucky. I grew up a Wildcat fan where I lived in Kentucky was 20 minutes from campus. It's just like, I bleed blue. And, my wife was like, hey, this is your chance, and I had a master sergeant that I served with that. Hey, it's so funny. Like he was always like, Matt, you should really look at the educational benefits before you get out of the Marines. And I kept telling him I will when I get out. And he's like, you're just telling me that to shut me up, which at that time I was. But he actually made an appointment for me without me knowing at the community college in North Carolina. And it's just having those types of people in my life, and came back to Kentucky, graduated from University of Kentucky, and then just I started doing veterans outreach with the congressional office, and now I do stuff with the nonprofit. And back in maybe the fall, actually all of last year, I just sit here in this spot right here at like 5:30 in the morning when I get my daughter on the bus. I drink my coffee and I just reflect on life. And just like, what do I want with this life? What do I want to do with this life? And it makes me think back to those early days in recovery when all I felt like my new purpose was to go in those hospital rooms, to be around those who are severely injured, who think life is over. And it's like, I've experienced my part. I've also had nearly 2 decades of just living life that put more tools in my toolbox. And then I also like got real close with, you know, I got off social media, and then I realized I have an app on my phone that I very, very rarely, clicked open, and it was the Bible app. And I started reading for every day, the daily devotions, the verse of the day, and getting in these Bible plans and really digging deep into the Bible. And, maybe late fall, I was reading through Second Corinthians, and it just hit me that, man, maybe like 2 years or near, when I got injured, why can't I just like start venturing into more of what I wanted to do with my life, and really taking a different route. And, so I applied because we have Asbury, which is a big Christian school here in Wilmore, Kentucky, right down the road from where I live, and they have a seminary. And I started looking at some of their programs, and I applied and started around the end of January, early February, and March 19th, I got accepted. Which, interestingly, about March 19th, it was exactly 1 year from when I started reading the Bible. It was also Revelation 3:20, which has become one of my favorite verses about Jesus knocking at the door. It's like all you have to do is open the door and he'll come in there and eat with you. And for my whole life is like I just went through life, and one of the questions that was brought up in my Bible study group was, is Jesus waiting on you or are you waiting on Jesus? And for me, he's always been there with me, but he was just waiting on me to say, hey, help me out. He's carried me through a lot of things, and I love the footprints in the sand. But like I just all of that together, just I put together in my application, and I'm like, this is the journey. This is where God's putting me. And so this fall, I'm starting graduate school at the seminary, and kind of super excited about it. I love it's now I'm actually the researcher for my Bible study group, helping out my Bible study coordinator. And we're going through Genesis right now, and digging into Genesis, and just I love history. I love to research, and things I don't know. I love to look up and find out. And it's just so I'm super excited about this fall. And like I mentioned, it's like I don't know where this is going to go, but God will put me in that direction when I get there.
Amen. Well, for sure, Matthew, you have adapted. You've overcame. You didn't quit. You're a follower of Christ, and the Lord has used you tremendously to impact thousands upon thousands of people. And I appreciate it. You've impacted me in a, powerful way. I love the vision and your ministry. It's on your shirt: no legs, no vision, no problem. We have a lot of people that are going through trials. They're not as severe as yours, but as you know, when you're going through a trial, it's severe to you. And some of them are broken marriages, broken homes. Some of them's death in the family. Some of them's rebellious teenagers. Some of them is just health problems. I want to finish the podcast giving you the last words to say to those people. What would you tell them where they're stuck? They feel like they're in darkness. They feel like they can't move forward, and they feel like they don't have a lot of hope. What would your message be to that audience?
A lot of the work I do now with the nonprofit, it's more for like military and veterans, but it's you know, and a lot of people like they'll come to me and they're like, how can I share this with you of what you dealt with? But at the end of the day, like we're all dealing with issues. We're all dealing with struggles. We all have those dark days, but it's for me, I wake up every morning. The first thing I do is click into the Bible app and I start reading through the verses, and it's amazing how like when God sees how you are, like He puts the right verse, and also one of the things we talk about is just picking up your phone and calling a friend, reaching out, hearing their voice. It's look at even I always tell even Superman can struggle. Like it doesn't matter how strong, how tough you think you are. We all have bad days, and we all need each other. We all need to be there for each other. And you're not weak just because you want to seek out a counselor or a therapist. It's their job. It's what they're there for. A chaplain, a pastor. We all need each other. And like Ronald Reagan, his quote, we can't help everyone, but everyone can help someone. It's like you don't need to have all these degrees to have all this. It's like you just need to sit there and listen. And it's the book of Job is a good example. It's I always take pride into like the two words I love the most is silent and listen. Most two important words, and they're spelled with the same letters. They're just scrambled. Just sit there and listen. Give somebody the moment to where, okay, hey, whatever you need, you could reach out to me. You could open up to me. Like I might not be able to help you out, but I'm sitting here, I'm gonna listen, and we'll get through this together. It's to be that battle buddy, and it's to be there for someone. It could be from your wife to your kids to anyone. Don't let it sit around and just like, you know, keep it in your head. Like let it out, share it. Because after a while, it's just going to be a bunch of hot water that goes over the pot. And you don't want to get to that level where it's because that's too far. It's important to speak up, to speak out, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
It's great, Matthew. Amazing. It's awesome to be able to call you a friend. When I'm down, I will pull up your story and I will see what you've went through and where you're going, and it motivates me. And so keep doing what you're doing. You truly adapted, you overcame, and you continue to do that. Doesn't mean tomorrow is going to be any easier. Doesn't
Um,
mean that you're not going to have struggles like everybody else, but your mindset is I'm going to conquer, I'm going to overcome. And it's helped so many other people, and I appreciate it. It's an honor to call you a friend. And thanks for coming on and helping a lot of people in our circle. And we look forward to talking again soon. Thanks so much for listening to the Financial Pastor Podcast. If you have more questions or would like to reach out to me, feel free to do so through email, brandon@alcova.com. You can also go to our website, victorybaptistcf.org. Also on Facebook, you can find us. And we'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. And remember, to be encouraged. God loves you. God's got a plan for you. Just continue to walk closer to Him.